This session represents the core of what we are all about. It represents our attempt to live an Islamic life. All of what we've been talking about so far is learning Islam. Learning Islam is not just a mental exercise that we go through, but it's learning instructions and commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to live by in our daily life, in our every moment of our life. The next session is just about that. The implementation of our Islamic life in a society that is non-Islamic. We have two profound guests who are going to share with you and converse with you and have a dialogue, a two-way dialogue with you about your life, about the relationship that brings about the family that is the most important block in our Ummah's structure. I would kindly request Dr. Ahmed El-Kadi and our brother Shakir Al-Sayyid to come up here and be the moderators of the conversation, the Islamic conversation regarding the marriage and the home life. Please, brothers. I encourage everyone to come up with a problem. When we discuss a problem, we need to find the Islamic solution for the problem. And when we find the Islamic solution, we need to go home and practice it. Because if we don't put it to practice, it's worthless and it's meaningless and it's a waste of time. I will ask my brothers to give a brief presentation before we start, and then we will start with your problem, give it to them, ask them what to do about it, and then we'll take it from there. Jazakumullahu khairan. I'm happy to learn that we are not going only to have a man here telling the couple what to do. We're going to have a couple telling the couples what to do. Sister I.El-Khadi, we would kindly request her to come up here also to join her husband in giving the Islamic perspective of our married life. MashaAllah, we have the full file of scholars here tonight.
You need a husband, a wife, and a dispute.
Okay, we have the husband, we have the wife, and we have the disputes right here. No, we have the disputes. We have plenty of them, inshallah. And this exercise is not a mental exercise, brothers and sisters. It's our life. Let's see what Islam tells us about it, how to restructure it to become a really, really Islamic life and lay the foundation for the generations to come. Because these generation who are going to marry in the next 4, 5 years, 10 years, they're going to learn from us how to behave as husbands and wives. I leave the floor for my respected speakers.
I believe it is really an honor and a great opportunity for myself to sit beside Dr. El-Kadi here, and I feel humbled. I have learned from him so much that I feel shy to sit and talk while he's listening. But I will take this opportunity that he's listening so that he can have the chance to correct what I'm saying. Inshallah. I'm going to take only 5 minutes, but those 5 minutes need your notebook, because I'm going to mention some points very quickly, and it's going to be difficult to go over each point in details. But the light I'm going to try to shed is on basic concepts that relate to marriage in Islam. First of all, marriage as defined by Islam is known as pairing. That's why both the husband and the wife in Arabic zawj, and the zawj is a pair. So the basic concept of getting two people together is to pair. And when you pair two people together, when you pair two things together, there is one of two possibilities. When I hear some people talking, it makes me quite
Nervous.
uneasy. So I don't want to make a dispute before we solve one. When we get two people together in particular, or even any two things together, there is a good possibility of one of two situations. One in which you see the two of them working like my two hands, like here. You see them working in harmony. And there is sometimes a possibility that they come in conflict and confrontation and never be able to deal with each other. As you can realize, it takes walking some distance to bridge the gap and make it work. And that distance has to be walked by both the pair, which means the husband and the wife. Also, marriage means sharing. Sharing the whole of you with the whole of him or her. Sharing everything. And I'm not going to make details. Marriage also reflects what Allah told us in the Quran, that both the man and the woman did come from the same origin. Both are created from dust. Both came to worship Allah with the same mission. Both came with temperament, came with human nature, came with the inclination to be good and bad on both sides. So the human structure is common, the human component is common, the human feeling is common, the mission that Allah established for both is also common. Even though men and women are created from one soul, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us, but because they were created differently in a way and similarly in many ways, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because of His wisdom, He has assigned different roles. And if you look into any two things that are not 100% typical, that are not 100% similar, they cannot be never identical, of course. Therefore, you cannot use them for the same functions. The father will continue to be the father, no matter what people want him to be, and the mother will continue to be the mother, no matter how much civilization comes unto mankind. Allah has assigned complementary roles and responsibilities for each to complement each other. The purpose of the Muslim family. The first one, the Quran teaches us tranquility, to live in peace, to create harmony, to create happiness. The Quran teaches us that the creation of one's own spouse from his own soul is لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا, to live with them in tranquility. So if there is no peace, there is no family. Also, compassion and mercy are two fundamental foundations for the Muslim family. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us that He is the one who has implanted compassion and mercy between the two. So the closer they come to Allah, the more compassionate and merciful they become toward each other. So the first is to become a servant to Allah, and the second is to become a successful spouse. Also, one of the purposes of the family is protection. One of the purposes of the family is fulfilling the human needs properly. One of the purposes of the family is to multiply and breed good, righteous offsprings, to take care of these offsprings. One of the purposes of the family is that it serves as a sign from Allah. This is what Allah said when He introduced the concept of family to us. He said, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا. It is amongst His signs that He has created for you from your own soul أَزْوَاجًا, spouses, لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا, to live with them in tranquility, in peace. وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً, and He has implanted compassion and mercy. Also, one of the purposes of the family is guidance. the Prophet ﷺ said, نضر الله وجه امرئ قام من ليله للصلاة فأيقظ أهله فأبت عليه فنضح وجهها بالماء حتى قامت وذكر مثل ذلك في المرأة التي تقوم من ليلها. So he mentioned that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brighten the face of the man who wakes up at night and wakes his spouse, which means his wife, to join him in prayer. Then she refuses. Then he splashes her face lightly and nicely with some water to awaken her up. Then she wakes up and joins him. May Allah brighten the face of the woman that wakes up at night and awakens her husband to join her in night prayer. Then he refuses, and she would splash his face with the same water, not more and not less. Also, one of the purposes of the family is to provide security for both the husband and the wife. And also, one of the major purposes of the family is to pass on the Islamic education, the Islamic heritage, the Islamic culture, the Islamic knowledge, and the Islamic practices from the fathers and the mothers to the children. Also, the family is a fulfillment of the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and we know that 3 people had vowed not to marry, not to stop fasting, and to pray at night all night. And the Prophet ﷺ heard what they had said. He called them up and he said, "Are you the people who said this and this and this?" Said, "Yes." Then he said, "It is part of my sunnah that I fast and break the fast," which means some days I fast, some days I don't. I pray at night and I sleep at night. Some days I do, some days I don't. Some nights I do it longer, some nights I do it shorter. And I am also created to marry and be married to, which means that it is part of being a human, as even the Prophet is to marry. Then he concluded by saying, فَمَنْ رَغِبَ عَنْ سُنَّتِي فَلَيْسَ مِنِّي, whosoever chooses a way other than mine, then he is not of me. So it is part of the fulfillment of the sunnah of the Prophet. Also, it is a good reason through the family to enrich our righteousness, piety, and good conduct, and also it achieves many social and physical objectives for both the husband and the wife. I will stop here, and unless needed, then we will mention some other points to leave the chance for my dear respected brother Dr. Ahmed El-Kadi and my respected sister Iman, inshallah. This is the mic.
Assalamu alaikum. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah. It looks like there is a lot of telepathy. We have not talked about this subject before, but several of the items I have listed for myself were already mentioned. I'll tell you what I use in my own life, and it is a limited experience, but it may be useful. So far it has worked all right for 31 years and seems to be getting better and stronger. On a daily basis, if I can, and if for some reason I don't do it, then at least on a weekly basis, I go through my mind through a checklist. And what's the title of the checklist? Maybe, should we continue or not? Now, that is not because there is a problem with the marriage, but it is just a reinforcement, a review. Are we still on the right track? And is it worth continuing? And it is usually a very beautiful outcome out of this checklist, because I reinforce the fact that there is such a blessing in what we are doing and it is worth continuing. The checklist is composed of just 6 items. The first 3 are the basic features of a Quranic marriage. And my brother Shakir has already mentioned the source of these 3 features describing a Quranic marriage. The ayah, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ومن آياته أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا لتسكنوا إليها وجعل بينكم مودة ورحمة. So the 3 features, basic features of Quranic marriage. First one is sakan, which could mean either peaceful settlement, so it is a settlement and in peace, or the other meaning is house. Second is a house. A house for you is a place where you find shelter, you find protection, you find warmth when outside is cold, you find cool when outside is too hot. It fits your needs. That's the first feature. Second feature is mawadda, kindness, compassion, as translated by Brother Shakir. And the third feature is mercy. These are the three and only three basic features mentioned in describing an Islamic or a Quranic marriage. Are these there or not? If they are there, alhamdulillah, how can we have more of them? If they are missing or one of them is missing, how can we fulfill it? Otherwise, we will be in a violation of a Quranic injunction. The next three items, I call them the three fundamentals for solution, if there is a dispute, or maybe prevention before a dispute takes place. Because if something is good enough to correct a problem, it is as good or better to prevent it from happening. What are the three? The first one, already mentioned, the fact that we are made from nafs wahida, from one self. وهو الذي خلقكم من هو الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة. Or the verse which I already mentioned, ومن آياته أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا. He is the one who made you from one self. So it has similar feelings. Whatever hurts me or hurts my feeling probably is going to hurt her feeling. Maybe I should avoid it. Whatever is going to please me is probably going to please her. Maybe I should do more of it. So that's the one first fundamental. The second one, rule or a statement or a fact we commonly ignore or forget. That's the fact that perfection is for Allah alone. Al-Kamalu lillahi wahda. And remember that alone has two lines underlining it. Rephrasing this means everybody else, everything else is imperfect, meaning it is deficient. So she as well as I are deficient. So there are many things missing in both of us. That should not be surprising. Why did I say that we often forget or ignore this fact? When my wife or my children or my fellow men or women on the job or anywhere, when someone makes a mistake, I get so shook up and angry and surprised, as if I didn't expect any mistake to happen, as if I expected everybody else to be perfect. You know, if someone else is perfect, that would be shirk, because al-kamal is for Allah alone. Perfection is for Allah alone. So just expecting that something wrong could happen, could take place, will take this shock, this surprise away. Sure, we can improve on things, but we shouldn't act so surprised and shook up and angry, which is usually the beginning of a big fight, because someone is unhappy with whatever the other has done. Now, part of this issue that there is imperfection, but I also realize that beside the many things missing, that's a deficiency, there are even more things present, more of good things, a lot of good. How come? Where did I get this idea? The Quran is telling us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, وَعَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. So it is not a lot of good in the things we like, but in the things or in the ones we hate. If we should hate them because of the bad features they have, that is where a lot of good there is. So if we just start counting these good features, we realize if my spouse has 30% bad features, where are the other 70% of good features? Many times it's just 10 and 90, not necessarily 30 and 70. Even if there are 40% bad features, not surprising, but there are 60% good. So start counting the list of blessing, the list of good features. And that's the second fundamental. Once I have that list, there's a mental list in my mind, and it's full. There's plenty of good things listed on it. And the third fundamental is insist on what's of benefit for you. احرص على ما ينفعك. That's part of an authentic hadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It starts with a familiar note. المؤمن القوي خير وأحب إلى الله من المؤمن الضعيف وفي كل خير. Usually we stop at this level, but the continuation is very interesting. احرص على ما ينفعك واستعن بالله ولا تعجز. it goes even further. But when it comes to the benefit, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not say ihris ala ma yanfa' an-nas, what's of benefit for mankind, or ihris ala ma yanfa'ak wa yanfa' al-akharin. Insist on what's of good for you, benefit for you, and for the others. Or just insist on what is of benefit. ما فيه النفع العام. No, he said, insist on what's of benefit for you, for yourself. And stopped at this level. He went further. Ista'an billah wa la ta'jiz. Seek the support of Allah and do not give up in despair or do not be helpless. So I use this, that's usually a rule, very useful when it comes to that choice. We have tried everything, it's not working. Yeah, should we stop this marriage or should we keep it? I should not keep that marriage unless there is a benefit for me. Many people say, we'll continue this marriage for the benefit of the kids, or for the benefit of the reputation, or for the benefit of such and such. No, that's not the Prophet's advice. Continue marriage, or continue working with a certain company, continue living in a certain country, wherever it is, only if it has benefit for you. And here, when I do that commercial comparison, I'm getting some harm from this marriage, responsibilities, liabilities, whatever. I'm getting some benefit. Are the benefits exceeding the harms? And these benefits, are they dear enough to me to be keen on having them? If it is the case, I should keep this marriage. Of course, I said I do that in advance, every night, because usually I find there is so much benefit I'm getting from this company, and because it is an order, it is an advice of the Prophet ﷺ, it is an Islamic injunction to insist, to be keen, to grasp this marriage, and whoever is in the marriage, spouse and otherwise, because it is of benefit for me. And therefore, I will never feel under pressure to stay in this marriage, but I am holding it very tight. That's hirs, because it is good for me, and therefore I will always feel that it is a blessing. I'll appreciate it. These 6 items on my checklist describing the features of Quranic marriage, 3 items, second, mawadda and rahmah, and 3 fundamentals. Yes, there is imperfection, but there's a lot of good next to it, much more good than less. And there is also the common feelings, and this by itself, knowing that it is one source, so there are similar feelings, this can by itself can prevent any wrongdoing or any hard feelings. And then the third one, which is and everything else fails, it will do the job. Insist on what's of benefit for me, and then do the comparison. It's usually good. Anyway, that's what works with me, and maybe if you try it, it will work with you too, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Can we hear from the sister also for a couple of minutes?
ده هو اللي بيسمع الثاني للتسجيل.
الاثنين مع بعض، واحد بيسمع وواحد بيسجل.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm glad to see so many sisters, mashallah. Inshallah, we'll all benefit from being here tonight. I would just like to say a few things about how I look at marriage. And as my husband said, alhamdulillah, we must be doing something right, because I think our marriage is getting better all the time, alhamdulillah, with Allah's blessing. I think for me the most important thing has been to look at my husband not so much as a husband, but as also a best friend. And I was thinking today of what are the things that make friends, and how do we treat our friends. I see in some marriages where it's him against me, you know, there's the husband on one side and the wife on the other, and it's his word against mine, or you know, even we use this sometimes with the children. You wait until your father comes home and he'll hear about this. And that's not how an Islamic marriage should be. It should be 2 people working together for the same thing. And you don't use your husband as a threat, and you don't use him like the one who's at war with the rest of the family, but rather as the guide and the maintainer of the family and the protector. So in other words, there should be mutual respect and a great deal of friendship. And on my way here today, I was thinking of how do we deal with our friends? What do we look for in a friend, and what do we try to provide our friends? The very first thing, of course, is companionship, whether that be a woman friend or, in this case, your husband. And by companionship, that would include sharing ideas, that would include spending time together, and I'm afraid in many, many families this is neglected. And I think it's helpful. We have done this in our family, is to actually go on dates. You know, we say dating isn't allowed in Islam. It's not allowed before marriage, but it is definitely allowed after marriage. And being together alone, away from the problems of daily life, away from the problems of the children, really puts a new perspective on your whole day, your whole week possibly. And sometimes I don't see my husband for 2 or 3 weeks at a time because he's traveling. So when he comes back, we make a point of spending time together. And it doesn't mean that you don't discuss serious issues. You can, but it's in a more relaxed atmosphere than when you have to worry about a child who's crying or the telephone that's ringing every 2 minutes and so on. So companionship is very important. Secondly is communication. You can't have companionship without communication. For communication, you have to be honest. You have to be respectful of the other person's feelings, and also respect your own. And you have to get something out of the friendship. You never have a friendship where you just put in and you give of yourself and you get nothing in return, because then it's not a friendship, it's just a charity case. What you need is something to sustain yourself as well. So when you give, you expect something in return. And to do that, you have to communicate. Next is understanding. And I think it helps a great deal if we as wives would know what kind of work our husband is doing, whether it's professional work or dawah work or any kind of activity that he's involved in. We don't necessarily need to be there with him all the time. But once in a while, we need to know and experience what he goes through, because it gives us an understanding of why when he comes home he doesn't want to talk because he's so tired, or why he's upset about something that happened at work, or exactly what his problems are. And I was very fortunate, alhamdulillah, to have this experience. I have worked with my husband, not for money, but I have shared some of his work, and I still do, alhamdulillah. And of course, when your children are very young, that's very difficult to do, but at least you can communicate with him and try to find out what it is he does for a living. I did something some people might think rather foolish. When we first got married, we didn't have children. I read all his medical textbooks that were in English. And it didn't make me a doctor, but at least I know now what kind of issues he has to deal with. And I had a friend whose husband was an engineer, and I made the suggestion to her. I said, well, pick up one of his books, see if you can make sense of what's in there. And she did. And she said, you know, now I know why he has these, times when he has, he's trying to puzzle out a problem, because this stuff is so complicated, I don't know how he understands it. So it really gives us a perspective or an open window on what our spouses do. Now, the same would apply to the husbands. I think once in a while they need to keep house, they need to take care of the children, to see, not because we're dumping on them, but only to understand what their wives have to put up with. And I think all the sisters here will agree with me that being a wife and staying at home and being a mother is not the easiest job in the world. In fact, being a parent and especially a mother, is maybe the hardest job in the world. So it won't hurt if our husbands learn to share some of that with us in order to understand why at the end of the day we may be screaming at the kids, or we never want to see another child in our life anymore. You know the feeling, right? Another thing we look for in friends, and we try to give our friends, is support. Not necessarily financial support, but emotional support. And if we find that our husband or our wife makes a choice, we should support them in that choice. Sometimes we don't agree, but at least show that we care enough to give that support. The same thing, of course, would apply to our children. But this is what friendship is about. When your friend makes a decision, you can give advice. You can say, well, I don't think this is a very good decision you've made, but I'm with you all the way. Whatever happens, I will be your friend. And this is, of course, more important in marriage, because it's not something that if it doesn't work out, you say, okay, that's the end, you go your way, I go mine. No, you're still going to be married, whatever the results of this decision are. So give your support even if you don't agree. Another very important factor is knowing how to share times of fun, laughter, humor, and I think that's why we seek friends. That's why we need friends. Why do we have friends? So that they will make our load in life a little lighter. And if we as husband and wife can do this for each other, then our load, especially since it's a shared load, will be much lighter, and perhaps will help us take on additional loads and do more for the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think that's all I have to say, and inshallah you will add to the discussion as it comes.
I thank the brothers and the sisters for such an enlightening perspective of our marriages. Unfortunately, we hear the situation that the way it should be in real life, it doesn't always work. And we all know that there are moments of our life, there are issues of our life that even when we are aware of these ideas, there are still points that we cannot resolve just by knowing what to do in the theoretical sense. I'm going to list many problems that we've received. I'm going to list them just to make you think about your own problems maybe, or a problem of a friend, or a family that is in trouble that you are aware of. And then after that, I'm going to ask the brothers and the sisters to make a line next to one of these microphones and to try to explain what is the dispute, what is the problem that they want the panel speakers to address. And I'd like my brothers and sisters to limit their own explanation of the problems to a very short explanation. We do not need all of the details. So if we limit it to about 1 minute, and then we'll ask the panelists to address the issue and try maybe into as much feedback of the audience as possible. So, see, it's already going in written form. Let me just throw at you some of the problems that we've heard about. One problem is how to deal with the in-laws. My mother-in-law came from such and such country and she's making my life miserable. That's one of the sister wrote. Okay, the property of the husband and the property of the wife. One wife wrote that I work hard, and he insists on taking all of my income to spend it on his own, whatever is he doing. Another husband writes that I work hard, and she saves some of the money to spend on her own or to send it to her family, and that's creating a problem. Another issue also, he wants to go back home, she doesn't. Or maybe she wants to go back home, if there is a back home, and he doesn't. Then what to do? Send everyone to his home, I guess. Maybe not. We'll find out. Also, one of the sisters wrote that, I don't trust him anymore to lead the family. What should I do? I don't think he's competent enough to be a leader of anything, let alone the family. So, should she become the leader? We'll find out. Also, dealing with the kids, the teenagers, the girls who want to go to college. She's 18 and she's out of high school, and she's beautiful, and a lot of boys are asking for her hand. The mother wants her to get married, or the father, maybe in the case, and the other parent wants her to go to college. And the girl, she's confused. She doesn't know what to do. Or maybe the girl wants to go to college and the parents want her to get married. That's another issue of dispute. Also, for newly married, the use of birth controls. Maybe he wants her to take the birth control, she wants kids, or vice versa. Maybe he wants to make sure, just by giving a birth to one child, that she is capable of doing that in the future. So he wants to guarantee that 10 years down the road, he's not going to be without children. Who decides what to tell the children, how to train them? She wants them to be brought up in a certain way, maybe more Islamic, and no, he wants them to be American liberals, or vice versa. Who decides? That creates whole kinds of problems. She has a lot of her friends, and he has a lot of his friends, and they're not common friends. Is she allowed to see them without his permission? Is he allowed to spend the whole night till 4 o'clock in the morning with his friends, with her waiting at night wondering where he is? That's another cause of problem. Also, the differences in culture. He is a Palestinian, she is an American born. What a diverse background. He's an Afro-American, and she's an Egyptian. And now you put the fuel with the fire, unless we, of course, control it with Islam, and then there are problems. All right, the man comes home, and she's been working and dealing with the kids all day long, and he wants to be served. He wouldn't even think of doing the dishes. She would do the dishes, he wouldn't even think of drying them. And she tells him that the Prophet ﷺ used to clean the house. He tells her, okay, that was the Prophet. I'm not the Prophet. You clean the house. And then everything, hell break loose then. All right, before they got married, the sister was very active, Islamically. Going to meetings, going to Maya convention, going to the ISNA convention, attending every convention there is in America to attend. After marriage, and she told him about this before the marriage, so she did not deceive him. She is active, she wants to become active and stay active. And he accepted it. After the marriage, he tells her, whoa, you can't do that. We're married. You're supposed to stay at home, clean it, make it nice and tidy, and bring and bear a lot of kids. Get me 10 kids because my father had 15. And I want 15 just like him, so you're not going to go anywhere. And then the problem starts. Then it comes, with all of these things comes the decision, after a few months or maybe even a few years of struggle and tension. Everyone is pulling aside. And then the decision, and the hard decision comes. Are we going to make this marriage work, or are we going to break it? And after we break it, what are we going to do? What about the kids? And then, unfortunately, some of our Muslim marriages end up in American court with a fierce, a bloody battle, and guess who is the loser? It's the kids. Now I will start with the sisters, ladies first, by the way. And we will hear one problem only, one problem per sister. We have 200 sisters. We can't hear 200 problems. That will be an overload. Our microprocessor cannot handle that many. So, okay. The sister will tell us the problem, and the panelists will answer. And every time I'll read these and dream up new problems.
Assalamu alaikum. Yeah. I come from one of the more disturbed communities, and I am being faced with a grave problem of these families, they're falling apart because of abuse. Nobody wants to touch it because it's nobody's business. I try to speak to the leaders of the community, and of course they give me a runaround. The worst thing is that most of them are converts, and it's really very difficult not knowing what to do. Can you advise me as to how should I deal with this? Should I turn the other way, or what should I do?
Thank you, sister. Any of you?
Okay. Although I think that many of the questions can be handled with one answer if it is radical, if it is deep. However, we'll take this one as a sample. Abuse is not allowed. لا يضرب خياركم. The best of you do not beat. And of course, if it becomes a repetitive thing, then there is much more than it. It's not just beating. It is, as the word says, abuse. My feeling is, if the problem can be corrected with advice, with counseling, and usually a few things have been done already. If it cannot be corrected, and the marriage does not qualify according to the Quranic criteria, which is sakan, which is kindness, which is mercy, it is better not to have this marriage. I know I may bring up some ideas which may sound too radical. No marriage is better than a non-Islamic or non-Quranic marriage. And if we have time later, we can elaborate on this. But in a nutshell, if the situation cannot be corrected within a reasonable time, give 6 months, give it a year, less or more, but it should be something determined in advance to some extent. Doesn't work? No marriage is better than a non-Islamic marriage.
Anybody else want to add something to this?
Was that the answer you're looking for? I think what she was looking for is where to go for help in the community. And I know for a fact that many of our imams try to minimize the problem by really not going into it. And quite honestly, I don't know the solution for that. There are social services, I know, but they're not Islamic, and I don't know to what extent they would help. But that may be our last resort. I think we need something on a nationwide level to educate our spiritual leaders in each community so that they're really aware of the problems and of how they can be addressed.
Thank you, sister. Anything else, Sheikh?
I may just add something that maybe a little bit something that the sister can do in her community. I believe that we tend to victimize, to criminalize the victim and just condemn them when they are 1 or 2. We say, oh, that's your mistake, you did it, it did not happen to you. I believe if this is a phenomenon in any community, that those sisters who claim the abuse should really get together, start something to educate themselves how to deal with the situation and exchange ideas, and at least by going through group therapy of how to handle the situation, they will find what they cannot find with their own families, especially sisters who are converts. They have left their families. They only have their husbands. So they need somebody to lean on and rely on and go to. So I suggest a support group. I also suggest that you ask as a group for a meeting with all of your husbands and try to have them sit down with the imam, because individually everybody is shy. They think it is my problem, I want to hide it, I want to escape it, I want to overlook it, I want to forget it. But if they feel that more than 5 are doing it, maybe it's a group problem, maybe the community has something that needs to be changed. Also, education is very vital. If the Jum'ah khutbah, if the weekend classes can handle such an issue. Also, the premises that the Quran has permitted beating women is just not a blanket principle to use and abuse. It has restrictions. There are 2 steps before using it. If the person passes those 2 steps and goes directly to beating, it is haram. If beating is not going to correct the behavior intended, then it is also prohibited, and the husband must just decide to do something else to that marriage, because continuous beating never corrects the behavior.
Jazakallahu khair. Now I'll take a written and then we'll come to the men's part. You said marriage should not be maintained for the sake of the children. Can you please elaborate on this issue more?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, it's you.
I know that's the most provocative principle I mentioned, and I know it is, but it's very effective. Just give you an example first. I rephrase the order of the Prophet ﷺ, احرص على ما ينفعك. It means also لا تحرص على ما لا ينفعك. Do not be keen on what has no benefit for you. And therefore, if the marriage is kept only for the sake of the children, but has nothing good for you, no, it should not be kept. And I'm very strong about this, but it may take a lot of elaboration. Now, you say, fine, it has nothing good for me, I'll leave the marriage. Then you start thinking, what will happen next? I'll be separated from my children. But I like the company of my children. And the only way to keep them is through marriage. Now, is company of your children very important to you? And that's to that extent that you will maintain it and insist on it at any price. You say, yes, I can't live without my children. All right, that is a benefit for you. If that's the case, then you keep the marriage, but it is for your own benefit. One of it is keeping the company of the children. If that's the only way, what's the difference of keeping the marriage for the sake of the children or keeping it for your sake because you want to keep the children with you? If you are going to keep the marriage for the sake of the children, you're not getting anything out of it for yourself. You always feel under pressure, under qahr, under pressure, it's just something imposed on you for the benefit of someone else. You're not getting any benefit. You will never appreciate anything you're getting out of this marriage because you're not getting anything. And therefore, it should not be kept for you. As a matter of fact, for the sake of the children, if this marriage is not Quranic, it is only fighting and abuse and a bad model, I think it is better for the children not to live within this environment, because otherwise that'll be the only model for marriage they have. And most likely, when they become married people, they will probably have the same model. I was told just a few weeks ago, when I was telling someone, a couple could not live together. And one made the comment, maybe the wife is just too idealistic. Maybe she got used to her idealistic home situation when she was a child, and therefore, but let her know that most people beat each other anyway. So she should not look for that model. That is what happened. If the children grow up in such a situation, they will think that's a normal marriage, and then we will perpetuate the problem. It is better, I insist, that children are raised without such a family, better than stay and get used to an un-Islamic model. Now, if the wife feels that, but it is her best interest to stay in that marriage in order to keep her children with her, fine, definitely keep the marriage, but it will be for your own benefit. You will enjoy it more, you will be thankful to Allah for this blessing, And because you will have the pleasure, and you will feel, and that's your own decision to keep this marriage, you will be much more cheerful, you will be less depressed, and you will be able to help the children much better, and help the husband too. Believe me, once you feel good about your choice of keeping the marriage because it's beneficial for you, your performance with your husband will be also much better, and most likely he will change. When we have time before the session is over, I'll give you a real example, a real situation happened in Panama City, Florida, and then you will get the point. But I'll leave it to later. Inshallah.
Anybody that wants to add anything to this? Okay, we'll take a problem or a dispute or a question from the brother section.
Turn this on.
Stir it up. It's on the top.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope I don't offend anyone. It's a small detail, inshallah. It involves hijab. I have seen many a couple who where the husband has married the wife where she was not in hijab to start with, and he was told, oh, don't worry, you'll be able to convince her, don't worry, just marry you know. And they go living 30, 35 years together, and she never wears hijab. I do realize that in Islam, the husband has some liability for his wife. I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong, some liability for his wife not wearing hijab. You know, part A, what are the rights of the husband, and on the other hand, what are the limits of the husband in convincing her to wear hijab? And part B, what are your suggestions to a person like me when I go to approach a woman for marriage and she's not wearing hijab? What should I look for? What should I think about? And so on. Thank you.
Let me tell you in advance, many things I didn't think this way 30 years ago and 20 years ago, but that's based on experience. I counsel a lot of couples, and these radical things, believe me, they work, and the marriage stays on. It is not that it'll become easy for them to, but at the time of selection, my advice now, select what you want to have. Don't count on changes happening later, although they may happen. Inshallah, everything will change to the best, but don't count on it. It is safer to take now what you see. If you like it, you keep it, and you're happy about it. But don't expect big changes. Okay?
Go ahead.
I think we didn't continue. The question was the degree of responsibility of a husband. I think since if we look at the woman as an individual in her own right, then she is responsible. I mean, he's responsible maybe for making her aware of what she's expected to do, but he can't be responsible for her behavior. I think that would be very unfair for a man to be burdened by a woman's inability to follow the teachings. So his responsibility, I think, is as with your children, when they reach the age of puberty or the age of reason, then the most you can do is show them what needs to be done, but you can't be responsible for the decision that they make.
For the basic fundamental issue here is how much responsibility really does the husband take for the wife's action. And the question stems from the fact that we presume, and rightly so, that the husband is the leader of the house. We don't say how much responsibility does the wife take for the actions of the husband, because we presume that he is responsible for his action as a leader in the house. However, both are responsible to guide each other. Both are responsible to teach each other. Both are responsible to support each other. However, the Prophet ﷺ, when he made levels of responsibilities, he said, وَالرَّجُلُ فِي بَيْتِهِ رَاعٍ وَمَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. and the man is in charge in his house, and he is responsible, he is accountable for those that he is in charge over. So in a way he is responsible, but how to discharge that responsibility is another issue. As we said, education and support and encouragement is needed. But then if she fails to follow, likewise, if the husband is in violation, selling something haram, doing haram business, bringing haram money at home, then she is also responsible to guide, to educate and support for the change. How about if he doesn't? In both cases, the option is only one of two. Either to continue the education so long as you can and want, or to decide to separate if you feel that the harm is more than the good, as Dr. El-Kadi said before.
Now we'll take another dispute or problem from the sisters. Walaikum salam.
Alhamdulillah, I've been married to my husband for 11 years now, and there is an issue for a long time that I've been trying to find an answer to. And since about 1 year after we got married, we have lived with some member of his family, whether it be his brothers who come overseas to study in the United States, or his father. And from that time up until now, there has always been an extra member of the family in the home. And where I'm concerned, it doesn't give me a lot of privacy, and I know that Islamically there must be something, something that Islam says about this. And inshallah, I would like to know if you could give me some advice, or if you know. I did read a hadith. I don't know if it's a hadith or not. I read it from a book, but it said that the husband doesn't have the right to bring someone else into the home to live without his wife's permission or without her consent. And if that is the case, then he should at least provide for her a room where she could go to relax and to be happy and to feel herself. And I told him about this, and he's very close to his family, so I respect them, don't get me wrong, I respect them. I mean, my father-in-law, I love him very much, just as if he were my own father. And the same with my brother-in-laws, but I mean, after 10 years, you kind of feel that you want to be alone. And I stressed this point to him many times, and it just don't get anywhere. And that's it, inshallah. If you could just give me some advice.
Take it again.
Did you have good experience with it?
You had the experience, you had your in-laws.
I suffered for 25 years. MashaAllah.
Yes, we had good experience with this because we used to have someone with us most of the time. But I can see the light now. That, of course, the concept of an extended family is a good concept, as long as both husband and wife believe in it and it's working. Wonderful. But if it is not, then you have to make a choice. Both husband and wife have to make a choice. Either the limited family, which is maintaining a happy family, or no family at all. That means this marriage to continue, you have to make the choice. Either keep the in-laws or keep my wife. I mean, if it comes to that, yes, you may tolerate it for a year or 2 or 10 or 25, but there is a limit. And now with my experience, I would say, don't wait that long. If it looks like it is a happy extended family, fine. But I mean, decision is very important, and the decisiveness, and the sooner the better. Once it becomes obvious and apparent that it is not compatible with the true picture of a Quranic marriage, as I mentioned, second mawadda rahma, then something has to be done. And if it is the husband who has to make the choice, fine, let him make the choice, but it should be either or. And keeping in mind, it'd be ideal, it'd be perfect to be able to have the wife and to have the in-laws and everybody's happy. But as we know, nothing can be perfect. So since we cannot have it all, we have to select either or. We can't just impose the impossible. It has to work. No, it doesn't have to work. And usually, when it comes to that, the husband will prefer the wife and the marriage will continue happily.
Jazakallah khair. Anyone wants to add to this? Okay, I'll take a written here. Want me to use the mic? Okay. Please give us Islamically acceptable idea of dates. It seems the idea is gaining popularity here. And my husband thinks so much of outside is haram. So when we go out, I found that we go to other houses and are then separated. We really need this, and I need some suggestions to ensure my husband that the whole outside is not haram. That's you right there. Okay.
Brother Sheikh was asking me, are the dates pitted or not pitted?
The date, I guess the dates you go out on, not the dates you eat.
I see. I think the question is relevant to what my wife mentioned as husband and wife dating. And that's the only type of acceptable dating between husband and wife. And this relates to that type of acceptable dating because the husband feels that outside is haram. So when we go out, I find that we go to others, to other houses and are then separated. So we are not really dating. We are not outside together. And I need some suggestions. I feel that the word haram is overused. It is worse to call something halal haram than to call something halal haram. So it is a very serious word we should not use lightly. And no, the outside is not haram. The outdoors are part of the creation of Allah, and they can be enjoyed by husband and wife, and as well as they can enjoy it by single people. And the Prophet ﷺ is our best example. And we should not make our own rules. Whenever it is confusing, we don't know what to do, go back to the Prophet's time and see how he did it. The Prophet ﷺ would go out with his wife, Aisha, and go and have some fun, entertainment, family, Islamically acceptable entertainment. Watch the Habasha, the ones from Abyssinia, playing. It was their own dance, actually. And the expression or the terminology we find in the seerah is very touchy, very, very touching, I mean, very romantic. Aisha radiallahu anha will say, I would stand behind the Prophet ﷺ, my cheek to his cheek, khaddi ala khaddi, and watch. Cheek to cheek, that's a very romantic, I mean, they're right there, of course, there is a contact. And they are together, husband and wife, watching some entertainment, Islamically acceptable entertainment. And where it is outside the house. So, no, I don't buy this. Outside is not haram. Going out, husband and wife, alone, to have some Islamically acceptable entertainment is not just halal, it is a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and it should be done. So much about dates.
And now we take another issue from the brother who was the first actually to come up.
Hi, Imran, this is a question for you. I was wondering if you concurred with my mother on this. As far as spouse selection and its ramifications for after the marriage occurs, what is the role of love and rational decision making in spouse selection prior to the engagement, And what happens if a dichotomy occurs? And I know that the ideal would be a nice mix, but there can be a dichotomy. Where do you go from there? Which thing plays more important of a role?
I think he's thinking seriously about it.
Both? Oh, I see. That's a recording.
Okay, that's a very difficult question. I think both components have to exist. You cannot choose a person only because they are good people or a good practicing Muslim or from a good family and so on. You have to have some kind of emotional attachment. If we use the word love, we have to define it because the way it's used in Western society is perhaps very different from Islamic society, but there has to be physical attraction, there has to be some kind of emotional response. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to maintain the marriage. And there are some people that you see who, you know, there's nothing wrong with them, but you just can't imagine being married to that person. And I know because I went through this when I was getting married myself. There were people who came to my father, and there was nothing I could say, you know, there was nothing wrong with the person. I just couldn't stand being in the same room with him. Of course, you couldn't marry a person like that. So there has to be something there. I don't know what you call it. You call it chemistry, you call it anything you want. But there has to be some kind of emotional feedback. Otherwise, I don't think the marriage will work. And how this happens, I don't know. I think if perhaps through prayer, Allah will guide you to the right person. I myself had only 2 criteria to select a husband, and one was that he should have more taqwa, and the other one was that he would have more knowledge. And alhamdulillah, I got what I asked for. So you need to, it also happened that I liked the person, but alhamdulillah, but that helps a lot. But seriously, you know, you really have to look at the long run, and I think maybe a lot of the problems that occur happen because you don't know the person well enough, or you don't understand the person, you don't know how they think, what their expectations are, what their goals are, and if you don't have the same goals, you're going to have problems. Even if you find the person attractive, if you don't have the same goals for your life, you will definitely have problems. And another thing is, it's important also to see how the woman or the man would react with children, because if you're planning on having a family, it's good to see how they interact with children. Some people don't have the touch to deal with children. It's going to be very difficult if you don't see eye to eye on how to deal with raising children. So may Allah guide you and find you the right bride, inshallah.
No, عايزين ناخذ أسئلة أكثر. ولا إيه رأيك؟ Well, if there is something really to add here, because we really kind of like a unique community, and there is a lot of inter-culture, inter-ethnic background marriages, I'm suggesting against, I dare not to say against the Sunnah, but I'm suggesting that we extend our engagement period a little bit to the degree that it fulfills its purpose. The Prophet ﷺ had advised people not to announce engagement because it is a period of testing and knowing the other person. So take the advantage of that period and use it appropriately, and use the dua and the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make the right decision at the end of that period. and try to make it as soon as you can. But use this period to establish common expectations, common goals, common characteristics, common temperament and appreciation of each other. And then if those factors are there, then you can build on it. But if those factors are really missing, there is no need to extend the period or go for such a marriage. So just use a yardstick to know where you're heading in your marriage during the period of engagement.
I'll take a question from the written ones, then I'll come to the assistant. Before I do that, please, when you write me something, make sure I could read your handwriting. And also, do not write me the New York Times, because I can't read all of it. So make it short, make it brief, and make it clear. And if you have to write in block letters, please do. You know I'm not a native English reader or speaker. So please bear with me. One sister here wrote a whole New York Times about the issue of the wife being a virgin against the man fooling around. And that creates a lot of problems. The girl will always, or the woman will always wonder what kind of past relations he had, and that either whether he is comparing her to his past relations or something like that. We're not talking about a past marital relation. She's talking about a past non-Islamic relation. Anyone who wants to take? Oh.
I feel that وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلَ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. They have equal rights and obligations. Of course, the verse goes further. وَلِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ, and men have a step beyond. To me, it would say, if anything, they should be a step better. So, coming back to the question, if a wife is expected to be virgin, to be acceptable, then the same thing should apply to the husband. You can say the word virgin probably, but we'll apply it biologically. So, the husband should be virgin too. If we apply the rule of forgiveness and repentance, Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anh, given good news of being one of the dwellers of paradise, he killed his daughter in his earlier years. So he committed a serious crime. But he repented and it was forgiven. If this can apply to past history, it is applicable to both husband and wife. I have nothing else to say.
Sister.
Assalamu alaikum. Sometimes me and my husband talk about Islamic issues and I get very passionate, and sometimes I raise my voice and yell, and I want to know if women are expected to be more patient and more calm, or that's it.
I think both the husband and wife are expected to be calm and patient. And I don't know why you reach that point. Does he not listen to what you're saying, or why do you feel you have to react that way?
Well, sometimes we have we accept a different fatwa about something. Like, for instance, he doesn't believe that I should say any of my prayers out loud, like Maghrib and Fajr, and I don't know how to deal with it. And sometimes I think that he brings his culture over Islam, and it makes me mad.
I feel if it is an optional thing, if it is if you have two possible options of doing something, both are correct when it comes to fatwa. Then, of course, you can communicate, you can discuss it, which one is better for, but you have to reach a conclusion which is agreeable to both of you. If you can't reach this, his opinion should be the valid one. Somewhere you have to have someone in charge. If you accept this, and if this is the only way to continue the marriage. But I mean, in optional issues where more than one opinion is correct, ideally, if you come up with unified opinion, with salesmanship, when someone can sell his or her preference to the other. But if you can't reach this, and then something has to be done, the husband's opinion should have the final say, provided you accept that. If you don't accept it, then you can't have the marriage.
I don't mind doing that in any other issue except Islam, and he doesn't provide any dalil for something. I don't mind listening to him. That's what Allah commanded, to obey my husband. But when Islam comes in it, and he doesn't even give me dalil, I don't know, should I still listen to him, or should I put him over Islam, or over Allah? I don't.
No. I guess you didn't get my answer. If there is an issue where Islam has a specific opinion, clear, and he wants to have something else, he has no right, has no choice. Islamic opinion has to go. If there are two possible options of Islamic opinion, then in the same matter, then that's what I said. If there is no Islamic opinion at all, it's a purely intellectual matter, same thing applies. You try to convince each other with kindness and mercy. If you can't, then his opinion will have to go. See, no one wants to give in. Then how to solve it? Either dissolve the marriage or have his opinion go through. But ideally is reach mutual, and what will help you actually to solve, to get to that mutual agreement or have some middle ground, is when you apply the rule of the benefit. Okay, you say, I can't give in, I can't accept his opinion, fine, then marriage will be over. What is the other option, alternative? Once the marriage is over, if the option, the other option, the alternative, is better for you, fine, dissolve the marriage. More often than not, 95 or 99% of the cases, you will realize, no, the alternative without marriage is worse than staying in the marriage and accepting his opinion. Purely intellectual matter. And if that is more benefit for you, fine, stay in the marriage, and this will happen in 99% of the cases. But you will be happy because you will not feel that you are in this marriage against your choice. You are the one who wanted this marriage to continue as is, with all the deficiencies in your husband. When you tell me, but he's deficient, he has several bad features, it's not surprising to me. What did you think? You thought you'll have a perfect one? Okay.
May I advise the sister, if you can try to agree to consult both of you with one sheikh, because that seems to be a matter of preference of reference. Okay? So let us go, which reference are you using, which reference is he using, and agree to use one reference. Okay? And if it is all Islamic, lead your life through and don't stick to this. And I am following Dr. Ahmed's rule, and I say, like the known saying, if education is expensive, try ignorance, right? If marriage is painful, try divorce. And that is not really a good, pleasant option. But before using that principle, I always try to use some tips. Are there ways around the problem? And I believe there always are ways around every problem.
Jazakallah khair. One just suggestion to the sister, if they can avoid having fiqh debates at home and leave that to the masjid. When they go there, they should debate it there with the scholar that our brother Shakir suggested. That would help. I'll take one written and then I'll come to you. Just give me the mic. You don't need to. I received a very interesting question And I think it might be the cause of a lot of tension in marriages. That's why I want to address it right now. And I don't know how to read it other than just read it. And we are told that there is no haya, no bashfulness when it comes to matters of religion. And the Prophet ﷺ praised the women of the Ansar for being blunt in their questions to understand their religion. So bear with me. I know that in Islam, that if a man asks his wife for intercourse, and if she refuses for no reason, that the angels will damn and curse her, I think. Is there anything in Islam that if a man refuses to have intercourse, that it is wrong, that on his part, when he refuses? Do the angels curse him too? And I am 8 years younger than my husband, and I feel that I need... Come on, why are you laughing? This is life, so don't tell me that you don't think about these things. I am 8 years old, younger than my husband. I feel that I need to have more intercourse than he does. What do you think? Good luck.
I will venture to take this one.
Please do.
There is a general rule that governs the relationship between the man and the woman. That rule is mentioned, fortunately, in the Quran. So it is not a hadith to ask how strong it is or how weak it may be. The ayah says, وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. For them are equal, quote-unquote, rights and duties as it is on them, referring to the women. Also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when referring in a very appropriate way, I would say, as always, to the relationship between the man and the woman, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that they are garments for them, for their husbands, and their husbands are garments for them, which means both of them, when it comes to this relationship, they play the same role and they are expected to do it and take the responsibilities respectively and considerately to each other. Then when it comes to whether or not one partner is doing that responsibility right or not, there are many factors really that interfere in this particular part of the husband-wife relationship. Many of them relate to the likeness and dislike of what you are, what you wear, what you put of dress, and sometimes, as the Prophet ﷺ said, and many other Sahaba followed him, saying, I would love to beautify myself for my wife as much as I would like for her to beautify herself for me. So it works both ways, and we ought to be responsible enough before Allah, not only before each other, to take that particular part of the relationship seriously, because it is the most intimate part that makes life go on or get stuck in a way. And some people really do not use the rule that Dr. Ahmed put forth. If you feel so much pain in marriage, try divorce. I believe that that part of the relationship influences many of the divorce decisions much more than money, much more than in-laws, much more than anything else. Unfortunately, Muslims are not educated about the appropriate relationship, how to establish it, how to approach each other in a respectful way, and practice their life in a way that fulfills both of their needs without having to be nagged or to feel humiliated, insulted, or left behind. In fact, there are many authors or references made in Islamic literature on behalf of the Prophet and others that says it is very unfair for the husband or the wife, for that matter, to fulfill their own needs in that regard without looking at the needs of the other. So people must be very considerate and sensitive they do have to expect some experiencing with this issue, especially if both were virgin, as always expected from Muslims. So I believe that going through that experiencing period can take longer or shorter time depending on moral support, education, the level of compassion and tolerance to each other. And that's what I have to say, unless Dr. Ahmed wants to make some advice.
I'll just give you here a concept which may help in this and in many other situations. I call it the commercial aspect, which is, by the way, that's the Quranic approach, the commercial approach. Sell and buy, give loan, get it back more. Human being will not give up something he or she likes unless he or she is getting something in return of the same value or more. That's a rule. And that's human nature as created by Allah, and that's what we see in the Quran, and that's your benefit. That if you give up something, you should get something in return of the same value or more. Now, when you have a physical deficiency in one of the partners, whether it existed right at the beginning of marriage, or whether it is acquired because of an accident or a disease or what, things happen. A back injury, and you are paralyzed from the waist down, and there's a problem with sexual performance. So it can happen. Then you have a choice. See, I have this loss. I have to give up something which I like, which I need. What am I getting in return? And what I get in return, will it be of the same value or more? Will it be equally good for me or even better or not? And then you can make the choice. What will you get in return if you have to put up with this physical deficiency? It could apply to either one. If you find that you will get something in return better than what you lost, fine, that's your business. It is a business. And since you are keen on having what's of benefit for you, and if what you are going to get in return, although it's not exactly the same type, but of better value, sooner or later, that's your right to keep your benefit. Benefit could be physical or spiritual, could be now or in the hereafter, and you do the counting. And there is a rule in business, by the way, that late payment is always more than instant payment. That's normal in business. You pay now, it's $10,000. You pay in 2 years, it's 12,000, or whatever. So if some payment or some reimbursement is coming back in the hereafter, that's much later, I don't know how many thousand years later, you can imagine how much more it will be. You do the accounting, and you see where your benefit is, and you apply it to you.
Now we take we'll take your present. The mic on the floor.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Both? Like this? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. My question was dealing with, there's a common practice in some cultures where they would have the marriage contract and then sometime later the couple would live together, or not at the time of the marriage contract. There would not be the togetherness of the husband and wife. And I tried to find in the Sunnah and Hadith of what the nature of this relationship was in terms of the Sahaba and so on. I read somewhere that Sayyidina Ali and Fatima did not live together until 7 months after their marriage, and maybe the same case with the Prophet ﷺ in some cases. And I was curious as to what, is this the same as a marriage, or is there some kind of difference in terms of the relationship between the husband and wife? Jazakallah khair.
So the question about the effective date. I mean, the effective date of marriage, of consumption, may be later than the date of the contract. Aisha radiallahu anha, I think, was 9 at the time of marriage. I don't have exact knowledge, but I doubted that the marriage was consumed at that age. 11? Okay. I don't know exact, and someone in the audience, Brother Waleed or Imam Shakir, may know better, but we use the logic, and usually Islamic teaching will go with the logic and with the fitrah. The marriage can be consumed whenever it is physically possible and advisable. So whether you write this on paper or whether it's just understood and that be done, but before that, if it is not consumable, then it is just an intention. It is a declaration of intention. But in such a case, once at the time it becomes consumable, now the free will and acceptance of both parties have to apply. At no time should be a marriage against the will of either party.
I'm not curious in terms of the consummation part. I'm more curious about as to the legalness or the binding of the marriage. Because if in the walima or whatever it was advertised that this is katb kitab and this is not the marriage yutim bil aqd with the contract, in the eyes of the people it may not be a marriage. So is there some restriction on you in terms of what you can do? Was what I was asking.
Yeah. I don't have any experience. Brother Shakir will take care of this.
Only 30 years. That the relationship during the engagement period is governed according to the rules known in the Sunnah. Now that the contract of marriage has been signed and the husband and the wife have been declared as husband and wife to the community, then they can marry at any time that the husband wants. But the definition of what constitutes marriage will be dependent on the community, the norm of the community. For example, in some countries, if you sign the contract of marriage and then you say the consummation of the marriage will be 10 months after, the relationship during that period, the norm of the relationship in that period is always defined as that of the engagement. Even though Islamically speaking, once the contract is signed, then the husband has the right to initiate the consummation of the marriage at any period. But most people make that postponement for practical social reasons. That's why the norm will take precedent. Unless there is a pressing need or reason for the husband to say, I want it before, then it is agreeable that they should change the date once they want to do it. But what the norm is working against is the exploitation of the contract to have a marital relationship that is not acknowledged socially, because marriage contract has a component in it which is publicity. So here comes the society to say, I acknowledge these as a couple, or I don't. So the social norm plays a part, but the husband has a right as well.
I apologize for using the wrong word. I use consumption instead of consummation.
Yes.
You know, I'm just a foreigner. My wife is usually my reference in language.
We'll take a written one and then we'll move to the sister side. I have few concerns about the custody of the children once the divorce is final. What are the limits? What does Islam say? Who gets the kids? What are the visitation? The whole thing. Briefly, by the way, we don't want to start another session about child care.
We will defer to a faqih who's here in the convention. Sheikh Qaradawi should be really asked about this. It's really a detailed issue, and there's a lot of differences between different schools of thought as to how old a child should be here or there, and what constitutes a fit mother, a fit father. How about the girls and the boys and the differences, the needs and the wants? Do children have opinions or not? how old should their opinions, how old they should be for their opinion to be considered, I don't find myself qualified to really give a comprehensive answer.
Let's take a shot at this. Everything being equal, or assuming that the mother is fit, the custody is always, at least at the beginning, goes to the mother. If the mother is not available, then someone in the mother's family going up. At least for the first 7 years, and maybe till puberty. And that's where the disagreement, the different school of thoughts. But at least for the first 7 years, I don't think there's any disagreement. The custody goes to the mother or her family. If situations are not right, are not suitable, that's where it becomes a matter of judgment, who is most fit for the custody. But we start with the mother.
Jazakallah khairan. I would like to add to this myself, from my own experience of researching child custody, for my own custody battle with my child, I found out 2 points that are very important. I would like to share them with you. That in Islam, custody is not a sole custody. It's never a sole custody. One of the parents is never left out of the life of the child. The father is still the authority. He's still the one who provides. He's still the one that is involved in the life of the child. And reading some of the scholars' writings on this, the male child will go with the father during the day, and he will come. This is one of the situations, and to the mother at night. And the system that we live in, if the Muslims choose to go to the court, the mother gets the custody usually, and the father is left out. He only sends the money, the check in the mail, and he is out of the life of the child. So do not think of Islamic custody in terms of the custody battles you hear about on TV. It's totally different. The other point is, no matter what is the dispute between the scholars, the father at the end gets the child when the child is old enough to need the father as the role model, as the trainer, as the wali, and the guardian of the child. The dispute is whether it's 8, 9, 10, 7, 12, whatever it is, but at the end the father will get the custody. Where are we now? I think the sisters. Go ahead, sister.
Could you please elaborate briefly on a husband's rights and responsibilities regarding his wife's parents? That would be his in-laws. Do in-laws become as in the same status and level of rights and responsibilities as birth parents, as their own parents? In other words, very specifically, does the wife's mother, is she to be treated in the same respect as the husband's own mother?
As far as respect goes, definitely, because automatically when you're married, then your mother-in-law is your mahram for your mother-in-law, right? And the same applies for the wife and her father-in-law and her in-law. So the respect is there. If you want to ask about financial responsibility, that's a different issue. But as far as respect goes, definitely he owes the respect to, they become like his parents, as far as...
On all levels.
On the financial responsibility?
So all other levels, emotional, social, all levels, do they become entirely as the parent?
I don't know. I'll refer that down here. I don't know about the financial, but I know definitely as far as respect goes and socially, emotionally, definitely they should be. But financially, I don't know.
I prefer to make no distinction. Same, and if that's wrong, someone should correct this. Treat him the same as mine. Treat my parents-in-law as if they were mine. Whether it's financial or respect or emotional, but I'm just saying what I understand. But if it is wrong, I should be corrected. I stand corrected.
Is there a legal responsibility, Islamic?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, the financial responsibility of the husband only goes to the wife. and the responsibility of her mother or her father goes to their own sons and goes to their own fathers, goes to their own male relatives on their side of the family. They do not transfer to their in-laws, except if those sides of the family are really non-existent, which is quite rare. In an Islamic state, then they should be taken care of by the state in an appropriate, perfect situation, financially. But morally, ethically, and socially, they should be taken care by their in-laws, the wife or the husband, whether they are from her side or his side. So financially, the husband does not have a legal Islamic responsibility towards his in-laws, except if there is none in existence from their side to support them except for him. Then they become morally and Islamically and legally his responsibility.
I stand corrected. This sounds better. Sure.
Yeah, but I would
I'm sorry.
I would like to take the opportunity to make another correction. Even if the in-laws, let's say the mother-in-law here, that is the question about the mother-in-law. Let's say that she does not have any male on her family side to support her. The responsibility legally in the Islamic law will never be transferred to the husband of the wife of the daughter in this case, unless he wants to do it. That's his choice, but legally binding in the judge's courtroom, the Islamic judge will not force him to pay. But the judge will force him to support his mother and his father and his sister and his aunt if they have nobody else other than him. The Islamic Sharia is very clear on this, and it's not an isolated case, but it is a comprehensive way for the whole society to take care of itself. So it applies to everybody, and that way the complete system works. But he is never legally binding to take care of his mother-in-law. He should, though, if she is in need. He should, by all means, he should. I'll take a written, then come back to you. The issue of birth control. I think this is a very practical and very, it's an issue that we have to deal with on a daily life. So I would like to ask the brothers and the sister to enlighten us about what are the limits, what can be done and what cannot be done, and if it's halal or haram or whatever.
Birth control, halal, haram, limit. Brief answers: birth control is halal, is allowed. There's a lot of elaboration with provisions. Limits, it should be reasonable and mutual agreement. Again, a lot of elaboration is due. I mean, first elaboration, it should not be considered that the purpose of the marriage is just physical pleasure without any responsibility, and we should not have children because that's a burden. Now, that's a wrong philosophy, and the marriage should not be based on wrong philosophy. But based on the fact that it is allowed, birth control as such, whether to use it properly or misuse it or go to excess one way or another, that's where it takes a lot of talking.
Okay, I think we'll take your question or comment, whatever you want to do. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, 2 minutes and no more.
2 minutes. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I would like to have your attention. I might be easily misunderstood if you don't bear with me. This is what I'm going to say is basically based on findings and scholarly, well-written books. There's a very interesting book. It's called "Do Us Part Till Death." There's a very interesting book. It's called "Do Us Part Till Death." and this book is based on interviews with more than 350 successful marriages that's been lasting for more than 15 years. That's too long. Okay, then this is fine. The first and most important reason for their successful marriages was friendship. When those spouses were asked, what's the most single important reason for this, they said, if my spouse wasn't my spouse, I would like him or her to be my friend. That's number one. Number two, most of them reported that they fell in love, but they also reported that their love didn't last for more than 5 years, the romantic love. Other relationships emerge. Other contracts start. And romantic love, the importance of romantic love declines. The third point they said, which is I find it to be very interesting, sense of humor. The spouse usually tends to have a sense of humor. One wife said, for instance, that she saves some cartoons for her husband, so they would laugh together at these things. I went back and I said, do we have something in Islam like that?
The Prophet ﷺ had a very good
Yes,
sense of humor.
no, I know. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Well, he interrupted me, the brother.
You have 30 seconds.
30 seconds? Haram alayk ya rajul. Anyway, I read Ibn al-Qayyim in one of his books said that the Prophet ﷺ used to take baths with Aisha, and they would play with the water. He would prevent her from taking some water, and she would do the same thing to him. There was some sense of humor that we lack nowadays. Another interesting story of the Prophet ﷺ, he raised Aisha twice. The first time she won, she was very young back then. Later on in their lives, she gained some weight. And he raised her the second time, and he won. If we ask our Muslim scholars nowadays, how many of them have they ever done such thing? I'd be surprised if any one of them ever did that. You interrupted me, I think.
Aisha did not have a solar flex, that's why.
Too bad, you lost the most interesting thing.
Okay, now I'll take a written one very fast here. Okay, you have to know that I have hundreds of these questions here almost, so we're not going to be able to cover all issues, so I pick and choose here. One issue that came more than once is how much affection a husband and a wife can show in public. It seems that Arabs or those of an Eastern background would show no affection, not even touching the hand of the wife. Some other people feel that they should show more affection in public, and I'll leave it at there.
I think it depends on where the public is. Like, for example, if you're at an airport and you're saying goodbye to your husband, I don't think there's anything wrong with hugging or giving a kiss or whatever. Not like they do it in the movies, but... and I don't think it's wrong if you're going sightseeing or you're going for a walk in the country to hold hands. I mean, it's understood that this is your husband, especially if you're dressed Islamically. I don't think people will misinterpret your behavior. And it's a personal choice that people make. Some people are very affectionate and others are more reserved. So I think it's a personal decision that you have to make. It would be very inappropriate to stand up in a mosque while somebody's praying and, hold hands or whatever. I mean, you have to use your judgment. And I think the time and the place and the degree, you have to use your judgment for that. And just be careful of the surroundings and use your taste and good taste for that, inshallah. Would you like to add anything?
No comments? No comments from me either. The young lady.
What happens if a man divorces his wife and he has children and he doesn't phone them or write to them or come and visit them, only visits them once a year or something, and he doesn't send them any money? What happens to him?
He needs to be shot.
Not a good answer.
Go ahead and take it back.
Yeah, it's obvious that there is something lacking. It is not right. Something wrong. There's probably lack of mercy or lack of knowledge or lack of something. Alhamdulillah, Allah's mercy would substitute for any lacking mercy. That's just in general. So if one feels like neglected by someone who's supposed to be the first one to care, there is a substitute, because Allah and of course many other people, mother, friends, others, are available, and therefore the person will get plenty more than he or she has missed. There is some legal obligation which of course always advise and the help of some elders in the community or relatives is good. Sometimes one has to use a judge's power to have some legal injunction. But most important, one should not feel deprived. Yes, it is lack of many things which should be coming from the Father, but there will be plenty more coming instead from others, and first of all from Allah. I don't know, did I answer it? Because you may never not be able to force him to give what he's supposed to give. That's all right. You will be still winner because you will get much more from other sources, starting with Allah.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Also, I think if we pray for that father, because he is missing out on a great deal. I think if you don't have a good relationship with your children on a regular basis, you are the loser as a parent. And I think if you are the child, you should perhaps pray for him that he will return so that he will have some pleasure also from the relationship. And definitely he should not be shot.
I believe if there is any advice that the children of divorced parents should really hear, is that many parents who do not pay the custody child support money are normally disheartened with their wives, not necessarily with the children. I would encourage the children to write to that parent, to call that parent, and to always be in touch. Tell him I miss you, tell him I want you, tell him not necessarily that I need your money, but I need you as my father. Where can I see you? When can I see you? And the child plays a great deal of role. I have seen children fixing marriages that parents could not hold for long.
One advice I have for the children, if I may, is that the children should never feel guilty because the marriage was dissolved. It's not the kid's fault. Some kids do feel guilty that it might be my fault that my parents are divorced, and they go through trauma feeling that way. It's not your fault as a child that your parents couldn't get along. But I believe the father who does not support his kids is committing a grave mistake, and he is committing a grave sin inside of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if there is any comfort in that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not let him go without being questioned about why didn't he support his kids. So he is the loser when he doesn't support and love his kids. So, but don't feel guilty as a child that your father is doing this. We don't have anything on the men's side, do we? Okay, then get up and say.
I have just a little comment. I would tell my little sister just to pray for us that we could establish an Islamic state where we could bring those ugly men to justice. Now in America, or in other countries where we don't have an Islamic state where we can forbid wrong, and we can bring those people really to justice. So she should pray for us, and we will be able to bring those ugly men to law, inshallah.
Do we have any, what time?
You can take one more.
Okay, we'll take the last one from the sister here. Go ahead, sister.
Walaikum.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
I've been married for 1.5 years, and
we're not hearing anything here. Stop playing with the mic, Ahmed. Please.
Yes. I've been married for 1.5 years, and my husband is a very Islamically very active, and he's very knowledgeable, alhamdulillah, as I wanted him to be. But he's very popular in our small community, and we have lots of brothers coming and going, and he's sometimes busy in the masjid or with his own research in school, and I sometimes feel that I don't see him at all. I don't get to talk to him. I mean, sometimes we have to have our dinner at 1 after midnight or 2, and it's very hard. I mean, when we are having dinner, even sometimes some people stop by and people are not aware of each other, so some people leave, some others come, and I don't want to offend anybody, and I tried to talk to my husband, but he takes it not very seriously, and he sometimes, in a joking way, he accuses me of being unhospitable. And should I try to be more patient, or how can I convey this to brothers maybe, that I need some privacy? I also need my husband sometimes. And what should I do?
The husband who's too busy doing Islamic work to have time for his wife. That's the case.
Of course, easy answer is seek the advice of the imam and the elders in the community and try to get them to advise him. The problem is most of them are in the same boat, are both guilty of the same neglect. And I don't make an exception for myself. Again, it took me a while to realize a few things in life. But so one practical thing you can do, if you can bring him to come and visit us. A couple of days in Florida, nice, on your way to Disney World. Or if you feel it is appropriate, we can invite both of you to come. But anyway, sometimes advice from someone who is reasonable may help, may be effective. Or you can try the challenge. Tell him da'wah is very important and you have to do a lot of things, and then bring a couple of references from the Quran that he should do exactly what he's doing. Continue. But start with the one who is closest to you, to him. الأقربون أولى بالمعروف وأبدأ بمن تعول. And so you want him to continue exactly the same thing, but include you as part of the audience of his da'wah work. And maybe he will see the point that, and it'll be, I feel, illogical. And if it is illogical, there is a suspicion it may be un-Islamic to do da'wah or take care of others and neglect the ones closest to you. Try this, may work. If I can go back to my young sister or daughter or granddaughter with the prior question about the father who is not taken care of. I think not only she should continue to pray for him, but you should continue to respect him and even love him. Why? Regardless what the parents do, even if it is very ugly and extremely objectionable, to the extent that you may not have to obey them, but you have to maintain the good, kind, and respectful relationship, and preferably loving relationship with them. That's applying to any children regarding the relation with the parents, mothers or fathers. وَإِنْ جَاهَدَاكَ عَلَى أَن تُشْرِكَ بِي مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا وَصَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا. Even if they go to the extent that they want to force you to commit shirk, to commit disbelief, Yes, don't obey them, but continue to be kind and respectful to them in this life. So this has nothing to do with his duties or lack of.
May I just add to your sister here? I want to laugh and cry at the same time because I went through something very similar. So the way we handled it was you have to make your husband aware that you really need him to be there. And I used to make appointments and go to my husband's office, and he didn't know that I wasn't a patient. You know, he said, the next patient is coming in, it would be me. And so you just have to do what you have to do to get what you need. And I know they get so busy and wrapped up in doing good that they forget to do it at home first. So you have to remind them. And that's part of your duty as a wife, is to act as a reminder to your husband.
Yeah, Brother Shaq is saying that some tips that we will conclude with these tips our session. I'm sure they will be helpful. Take them home and practice them if they apply, of course.